Oh my God, welcome to London Real. My name is Brian Rose, and with me is my co-host and cohort, Mr. Nick Gabriel. And joining us in studio today is Dr. Marc Barton. Welcome.
Thanks very much for having me, guys.
No problem. I first want to thank our sponsors at onit.com for their wonderful stuff, Alpha Brain, that's now doctor approved, because Marc has just taken his first Alpha Brain. So if you have any problems with it, you know that it's been studied and taken in clinical trials here.
And randomized control trial
in Old Street.
Of 1.
Please forward all correspondence to Marc Barton at...
Is there going to be a disclaimer on the website?
I might have to do one. But as you guys know, we're on Alpha Brain right now. We love it. And you can get some if you go to onit.com and use the code LondonReal. You'll get 10% off. Or if you go to our website at londonreal.tv, there's a cool ad there, and you can click on it, and then you can be razor sharp and lucid and checkmate. Mm-hmm.
And you might even become as good looking as Brian.
Oh man, you've been on it for years, I think. No, I've been on it now for maybe 3 months. I usually do 5 days on and 2 days off. Mm-hmm. And that way I think I rejuice it up on Monday, and I kind of feel it. That and a little cardio and a little caffeine does me well. But I just wanted to thank everyone that came out to the wine tasting this last week. I don't know if you saw some of the pictures, but it was fun.
Yeah, it was fun.
And Nick, we didn't see drunken Nick, did we? A little bit.
That was pretty close.
Buzz Nick. And but it was fun, right? It was a great room, and I think we had a lot of London Reelers that came along, and I just want to shout out to everyone.
Good. Thanks to James as well at Humble Grape. That was fun.
Yeah, that was really good. And we just wanted to mention a couple fans that are just being really awesome. One of them we met at the wine tasting, which is Diego Ferreira, and he's just a cool dude and a big London Reel supporter.
Yeah, he's cool.
And I just want to shout out to Diego, and also to Rabia Mahmoud. She's another girl she found us somehow, I think on Facebook or on Google, and she's just really supportive. And so cool. We just want to send her a shout out. But as usual, I will say again to you, Nick, who is this doctor in my house?
So I call him Dr. Marc, right?
Okay,
because I don't know, it's always stuck. I just call him Dr.
It's like Dr. Phil.
Yeah. Dr. Marc's he was originally a jiu-jitsu student of mine, and now he's become a good friend of mine. I'm actually the godfather to his daughter.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. I saw those pictures. Very cool.
Yeah, she's so cute, right? And besides being a very, very friendly and awesome person, Marc also has a very interesting job, which is he works in A&E, which is, for those of you who don't know, accidents and emergencies. And, I was so excited to have him on the show because sometimes we'll sit and chat, and some of the perspectives he gives me about dealing with people who are on their deathbeds. It's just, I don't know about you, but I've never even seen a dead body.
No, I've never seen anyone die, or I've never seen a dead body. So hopefully you have some pictures you brought with you.
Yeah, loads of photos on my phone. Yeah.
So, Marc, I know, and man, I know this theme keeps popping up because we're supposed to do it. There's some weird spiritual thing in another dimension that keeps bringing this theme up. I know it, Brian. I was talking to Marc this morning about DMT.
Okay.
And he's got a friend who has done it a few times. And then I was mentioning how when you're born, well, there's 2 times in your life, when you're born and when you're about to die, that your body releases a massive dose of DMT.
Okay, right, because when people have those visions when they come close to death, some people attribute it to DMT right, in the brain.
And then Marc was about to say something to me about that. And I was like, no, stop, save it for the show.
Save it for the podcast.
Yeah, you said I think you started saying you've seen so many people die.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen a lot of people die.
Hundreds?
Probably.
Okay.
Yeah, probably hundreds of people die. I spent a long time this year working in intensive care, actually. So I took some time out from A&E and worked in intensive care.
What's the difference between those two?
A&E is kind of the first 4 hours of your stay in hospital.
Okay.
So you come in, you get mangled in your car accident or whatever, and then we try and stabilize you, then move you to a high dependency area or somewhere where you can get nursed.
How important is that first hour? Because I read something about like soldiers in Afghanistan with the U.S. and they've cut the time down from like 2 hours to 30 minutes, where they go from the battlefield to treatment, and it makes such a huge difference.
It's what we call the golden hour. I mean, it's crucial. I mean, the whole story behind how the whole trauma life support thing came about was he's an American guy, I think in the late 70s, who was involved in a light aircraft accident with his family, and they crashed a plane in a fairly remote area, sort of in the Midwest of America, I think. And I think the treatment that his family got was poor. The way that the emergency services responded, and I think basically they all died apart from him.
Wow.
And then he took away his experiences from looking at what they did, and he felt, he was an orthopedic surgeon, I think, and he felt that he could create a sort of a pathway or a way of caring for people in the trauma scenario that that he could have done better on his own without them there than they provided. He could have done better with no medical services available to him. And he created what's called the Advanced Trauma Life Support courses, which we all do now. It's an American thing, but it's been incorporated by the Royal College of Surgeons in the UK. And you know, the golden hour, they preach, you know, that this is the time that you can save lives in that first hour. I mean, you get 3 peaks of death in trauma. The first peak's in the first few seconds, and this is usually due to some sort of trauma to one of the great vessels, you know, the aorta. You know, you may, you know, perforate your heart or your ventricle, or or some sort of major airway problem where you basically obstruct your airway and stop breathing. And he decided that there was, you know, this whole ABC principle. I don't know if you've heard of the ABC.
No.
So
Dude, I find this really fascinating.
Yeah, me too.
So you know, our first priority, the first thing that's going to kill you is your airway.
Okay.
So you have to the first thing you do if you have a trauma patient is you stabilize their airway. You know, and a good way of assessing that is if a patient can talk to you, they've got a patent airway. You know, and if not, you need to do something to assess that further. And you
so you look if they're struggling to communicate via speech. It's a
I mean that's something you can look at, different noises that they make. You know. Patients, you know, they can, you know, when you get involved in trauma, things can block the airway, your teeth, vomit, blood, you know, these sort of things. You have to clear that out. You may have to, what we call intubate a patient, which is introduce a tube into the trachea, and then you can plug someone into a ventilator, or you can bag them, and then you can breathe for them.
Is that dangerous if someone does that on their own? I mean, you always hear take the pen and get the tube and then cut, you know, the trachea and stick it in. I mean, is it?
You kind of need to have some knowledge of what you're doing, probably. So I wouldn't advise you guys to go
Is it a horizontal cut or a vertical cut? Or maybe we shouldn't be saying this.
You can actually do, this is what you're describing is a cricothyroidotomy. And there was a paper published not too long ago that showed that it probably doesn't work with a biro.
A biro?
I've never read this paper.
It's a British word for a pen.
So the sort of famous story of, you know, some doctor being on a plane with a coat hanger and a pen, you know, and
it won't work because of the airway's not big enough. I
think, you know, you can only, and also you need some sort of supplemental oxygen. You need to be able to ventilate the lungs. You know, your tidal volume, the amount of air that's going in and out of your lungs. We're looking at you would probably be about 500-600 mils. You can't deliver that through.
Is that per breath?
Per breath, okay. Yeah. So you can't deliver that through a biro or a pen. You know.
Okay.
That's intense.
Wow.
What do you, Mark? Like when you watch people die, is there any common thread like that you've noticed, or any common reaction that you've seen in people on their deathbeds? You know
when someone's died. I mean, you know, I can tell when that moment's passed. I mean, I mean, there's definitely something different about someone who's about to die and the way that their body is and the way they are immediately after death. I mean, there's something gone. You know, really? You can tell that. In the emergency department, the A&E setting, most of the people that I see who die have already stopped breathing or their heart stopped beating in the community and they're brought in by ambulance. Mm-hmm. We manage that as a cardiac arrest and try and resuscitate them. So you don't actually get to see that kind of moment as often, but you do see people, you know, you do see their heart stop beating or them stop breathing. In the intensive care setting, it's much more common to watch people die because you have patients for a long period of time. You nurse them for maybe sometimes weeks. And then you then actually you're more often around at that point of death.
Do they ever talk to you and say, I don't want to die and this kind of thing? Or
no, I mean, you know, a lot of the patients in intensive care, they're ventilated, so they're asleep, we sedate them and make them comfortable. I think the most important thing really is to make someone comfortable at that moment. Give them some dignity, you know. I
mean, the barbiturates and the opiates and stuff, how important is that for those people?
Important. Okay. You know, hugely, these drugs are, you know, a huge part of what we do. I think, you know, dignity in death is something that's very close to my heart. Very, very important thing. You know.
You know, I have a goddaughter. Her name is Kitty Ann, and she's 9 years old. And her father died from cancer about 2 years ago. And we got to watch him die, and it was hard. But he was on a lot of pills at the end, and he stayed at home. And man, I think they really helped him. I mean, those last 3 months, because he's been in a lot of pain before that, and he was taking the pills. And he used to text me. He's like, "Dude, I know this is the pills, but you know, I just want to say I love you and all this stuff." And it was just made a big difference, man. Especially because his daughters had to watch him. And
man, you know, when you say that, I took ecstasy earlier this year, like you know, and for you guys know I had that huge issue with that ex-girlfriend, and man, I was carrying a lot of shit around that. And you know, when I took that ecstasy tablet, like when it kicked in, the first thing I wanted to do, it was crazy. I just wanted to pick up the phone. I mean, things ended really badly. I wanted to pick up the phone and call her and say, you know, everything's okay. You know, I know we both loved each other, and even though it didn't work out, I don't care. Just everything's okay. And I could really feel like on a spiritual level that chemical, the way I was explaining it to a friend the other day, I could feel it did something to my heart chakra. You know, it like literally changed the spiritual polarity of my whole being. It was absolutely incredible. So when you say that, I mean, how the guy texted you and said, I know it's the pills talking, I can totally believe that.
Wow,
it's very interesting.
What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, you know, you talk about your heart and how different drugs make you feel. And obviously, you know, the heart, as we think of it, is actually, you know, a small portion of your brain, you know, and an area that's basically processing the information and the feelings that you have. And drugs can powerfully affect that, you know. And it's just a chemical shift, isn't it, really, in the way that you're thinking, and a difference. Drugs have very powerful effects, you know. Every drug we take, whether it's something that's prescribed, whether it's something that you take illicitly, you know, a drug for recreational purposes or a drug for prescription purposes, they're all poisons. It's just in the quantities that you take them, you know, even...
Poisons, why do you say that?
If you know, if say for example, you've got a headache and you go and take a couple of paracetamol, Tylenol.
Yeah.
It's great. Get rid of your headache. You go and take 100 of them, it'll kill you.
Okay.
You know,
interesting perspective that you have.
So you know, you have to be cautious with everything that you prescribe. Everything, you know, that I, you know, every time I write on a drug chart, I have to think to myself, you know, is this,
what's this going to do ultimately?
Yeah,
what are the side
exactly.
effects and cost benefit kind of?
You know,
yeah, cost benefit I suppose becomes an issue within the NHS because it's.
So what I meant is the physiological costs versus the physiological benefits.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
now you're on the front lines, and you must see a lot of alcohol related. I mean, I'm curious what you say, and a lot of people, like, you know, in California, you know, marijuana is legal and it's used for medical purposes and used for a lot of recreational purposes. But, you know, people talk about the injuries that people do to themselves from alcohol versus other drugs, and I was just wondering what you see.
I mean, alcohol is 40 to 70% in the UK of patients that we see in the emergency department come in with an alcohol-related problem.
Man, can I
Can
just
you imagine the
interject with a story that's related to that? I asked Mark once, we were sitting in his car, we were driving somewhere, and I said, you know, Mark's got 3 young kids. I said to him, from your experience, from what you've seen, if there was one drug that you could guarantee your kids would never take, what would it be? And he said to me, alcohol. And that really blew my mind when you said that.
You know, you have to realize that I spend night after night, you know, working in an emergency department with, you know, dudes pissing in the corner and trying to bite the nurses and, you know, just behaving atrociously, and, you know, you get a very negative feeling about it. I mean, binge drinking in this country is a huge issue for us, you know, on the front line in the A&E department.
Is that just a British phenomenon, in your opinion?
Well, I've only worked in the UK.
Okay.
I've done my elective in Japan. It didn't seem to be as big a problem over there. It's something I think we do particularly well over here.
Yeah.
And
you spoke about the repression in British culture, and it could be like one of the outlets, right?
It's a theory of mine, you know, that so, you know, socially, the British is always, as in Japan, it's more of a repress your feelings. There's not a lot of hugging, not a lot of kissing like you would see in Italy, and they seem to vent their anger. So I find that when the British get their drink on, then it all comes out, and then you guys dropping their trousers and running around, which, you know, you wouldn't necessarily see in a lot of other cultures. And I mean, I love England. I'm an English citizen as well, and but it's something you notice by being here.
Yeah. I mean, I can't think of another drug that has such a detrimental effect on society, in my opinion, and I know that's probably...
And it's legal, man.
Yeah, if I want to go and kill myself with paracetamol, I can go to one shop and I can buy 8 tablets. Okay, so then I have to go to another shop, buy 8 more, and then I want to go to another shop and buy 8 more, and eventually I'll get enough that I can give myself a fatal dose. If I want to kill myself with booze, I can go to Threshers and I can buy enough just in one sitting. You know, I'll go in there and give me the top shelf, dude, and he'll give me the lot, and I can go and...
I saw Amy Winehouse. She drank herself to death.
And you know what?
That's crazy. Just
that's
alcohol.
one of the reasons I know that the government doesn't have our best interests, doesn't always have our best interests at heart. And I don't want to, not speaking as a conspiracy theorist, but think about this, you know, like marijuana is illegal, right? And I'm not some crazy pot activist. Like that means nothing to me, you know. I don't think it should be legal, but I'm not going to go out like protesting about it. But if you bought 10 kilos of marijuana and sat there and tried to smoke yourself to death, you couldn't do it.
Right.
Literally, you couldn't do it. But I could walk down the street to the nearest liquor store, buy 3 bottles of whiskey, come home and drink myself to death in a couple of hours. It's legal and sanctioned by the government completely. And you know what it is?
So culturally entranced, though.
It is.
Yeah.
It's a social issue. I mean, this is a drug that's been, used socially for centuries, hundreds and hundreds of years.
Thousands, right?
It's, thousands, and it's become a big part of life. I honestly believe that if alcohol were invented today, we went into a different reality, that there's no way that it would be legalized.
Really?
I mean, this drug has the worst effects on your body.
Such as somewhat.
I mean, you name any organ system, it's going to affect it. You're going to give yourself liver failure. Okay, you can give yourself. It can affect your peripheral nervous system, give you peripheral neuropathies. We can't feel your feet. You're going to have. You can get a condition called Wernicke's encephalopathy, where basically you get forgetful, you confabulate stories, and you can't function properly on a higher cerebral level. It's a risk factor for loads of cancers. It causes cardiovascular problems.
Not to mention in the immediate term, it causes you to fall on your head.
I was
pick fights.
People make bad judgments on alcohol. People do things they would not otherwise do, and I see that all the time.
Complete loss of inhibition, right?
Yeah, loss of inhibition. I mean, people get into fights, they hit each other, they become aggressive. People, sleep with people they wouldn't otherwise sleep with, get pregnant. It has wide-ranging sociological effects. And
Mike Skinner has a really funny song. He's from the streets, and it's from his original album, I think, Original Pirate Material. And he's the weed guy, and he's doing this talk, and he's like, I just smoke my weed and play my video games, and it's illegal. And then the drunk guy's like, drinking's legal. I like getting drunk. So what if I beat people up? And Mike's like, I never hit anybody when I'm on weed, but it's illegal. And it's just this funny kind of
Speaking of the streets, have you heard that track, Blinded by the Lights?
No.
Oh, dude.
I love those guys.
They are so good. It was one of their big hits off Original Pirate Material.
I must have heard it then.
If anyone out there's listening and they haven't listened to this track, it's called Blinded by the Lights. It's all about this guy. It's like a narrative in a song, and he's taking an ecstasy tablet, and it's all about what happens as he goes into the club and takes it, and as it hits him. It's absolutely incredible. I highly recommend it.
I'll check it out, definitely.
Yeah. Don't do drugs. Stay in school.
Yeah, I have to really say that as well. I can't condone any illicit drug use at all.
Yeah, we just put up with Nick because he's funny.
You name a drug, and I can tell you some bad stuff about it.
Cool.
So.
Yeah. So do you see a lot of alcohol-related incidents?
Alcohol's the most. I mean, we had a rare quiet moment Monday night, and there was 2 of the other registrars on, and we were talking, and none of us could remember a night that we'd done a night shift in A&E, and we hadn't seen someone who was drunk and had hit their head.
Okay.
Literally. So we've been doing it between us maybe 20 years of experience. So all those night shifts, not one night has gone by that we've not seen someone who was drunk and hit their head. I've literally had to, when I was working in intensive care, I've had to ventilate patients, put them on a ventilator, intubate them, because they're so drunk that they can't protect their airway and they aspirate, and they would die if I didn't intubate them.
Wow.
And then admit them into intensive care for the night. That's £3,500 for a night stay, because they got so drunk that they couldn't basically support their airway anymore.
Man, when I think about getting drunk, tell me, I really would appreciate your thoughts. I know you're not a heavy drinker, and neither are you, but for me, I just don't understand why. I'm all for having a couple of drinks, and now I'm into that red wine thing. Have a couple of red wines and start to chill out and feel that awesome feeling of loosening up and get a little bit of buzz. But there's been a few times in my life when I've got out and gotten proper drunk, right? And goddamn, the next day, you can just feel that your body should not be going through that. And I don't understand how some of my friends even, they go out 2 or 3 nights a week and get blind fucking drunk, and you're destroying yourself. It's just, why would you do that? Why, you've been given this vehicle to get you through this experience, right? Why would you actively go out and try to fuck it up?
Because everyone else is doing it. Do
you think that's the reason?
It's culturally ingrained here, It's just the young people, and that's just what you do. You don't go out for a few drinks, you get fucked up.
Yeah.
And I don't know, they talk about how cheap alcohol is and whether that's the solution. I don't know if that is, but you watching that day in and day out must do things to you.
Well, I don't drink much anymore.
Okay.
So
I mean, do you lose your empathy after a while when everyone's coming in and you're like, okay,
these guys all get good treatment, you know,
okay.
but
I believe you.
But at the same time, you know, you do get a bit fed up of it, you know, and you know,
is it dealing with them while they're drunk too? And you're like, okay, behave.
Yeah, I mean, you know, some guys, they come in and they're just drunk and they sleep, and you know, you need to babysit them till they can wake up and that kind of thing. And then there's some guys that come in, they're really aggressive, you know, they're swinging punches at the nursing staff. And
have you had to use your jiu-jitsu on a drunk patient yet, or can you not answer that?
I mean, I've had to help restrain patients, and it's certainly helped. Yeah,
wow.
I mean, definitely it's helped. You know,
Yeah.
but I've had a guy that was trying to, you know, was biting a nurse. You know, so
Yeah.
you know, people, you know, that's out of order. You know,
Yeah.
you can't go in, get drunk, and then, you know, someone's trying to put a cannula in you or something to help you, and you bite them.
Can you sedate them, or is that something you'd only do as a last resort?
I mean, you know, they pretty much sedate themselves,
Okay.
you know, most of the time, you know, but, you know, yeah, you can, you know, sometimes these, you know, the sedation's required. It's a fine line, because you've already got someone who's got a lot of a drug on board, which is, you know, taking away their higher cerebral function or whatever, and their ability to, you know, to protect their airway and that kind of stuff. And then you start giving them other drugs on top of that, and then you end up having to ventilate them, and, you know, that's not a road that you want to go down, really. So.
Right.
Mark, tell me, how have you managed to? I've always known you as a pretty upbeat cat. You know, you're pretty relaxed, pretty friendly, pretty optimistic. How have you managed to retain that when all day you're surrounded by sickness and death?
Yeah, I mean, it can be tough sometimes, you know, and you know, I felt it sometimes in the ITU, the intensive care job. I mean, it can be a pretty dark place. You know, like a third of my patients probably die, you know, in the course of their stay, and I think it can be difficult to upbeat, but you do become a bit detached from it. You know, you can't take it all home with you. You have to leave some of it at the front door of the hospital when you go home. And
do you think that ability to detach, it's just something that, I mean, you didn't practice it, it just kind of happened?
It's a tolerance, I think. You know, it's like anything,
yeah.
You become tolerant to it.
Do they teach you any of this? Like, is there a psychology when you get your degree?
I think no. I didn't get taught it, but I think the medical students now, it's a big part of their training. I think they have sociology.
I've heard about that. They're implementing that now.
And I think it wasn't really something that, I mean, when I qualified, the system was a bit different, and it was still, you know, it was before the whole European working hours thing, where doctors reduced their hours and that kind of stuff. So, and it was this kind of, you kind of get on with it, you know, just get on with it, go and do it, you know, and you know, if you're not,
what do people say when you tell them you're a doctor? And why did you want to, when you were 5 years old, were you like, I want to grow up and be a doctor?
I didn't want to be a doctor at all until you know, late teens, really. And what do people say when I tell them I'm a doctor? I mean, I don't know. I mean,
do they look at you with like this ray of sunshine, like, oh?
I don't know. Maybe it's the circles I work in.
Every girl wants to tell her mom she's getting engaged to a doctor, right? I mean, seriously.
I don't know. I mean, maybe I just don't meet many people anymore, you know. But,
it's quite a burden of responsibility, man.
It's quite.
You know?
I mean, I'm probably wrong here, but it's quite. You know, I still think it is a noble profession.
Tell me about it, right?
You know, but then you probably don't think that.
I mean, I think, you know, I can go to work and I can do my job, and I can come home and feel pretty good about what I do a lot of the time, you know. And I think that, you know, and I think I do it because I know it sounds corny, but I want to help people, you know. That was why I wanted to do it, and I try and, you know, you have to try and remind yourself of that, and that's the reason that you're there. You're there to try and, you know, do something good for people and you know, and help them out when they need it. And
I've always met with the doctors I've had experience with, whether it's in an emergency room or going in, they're always super cool. They're always in control. You know, I don't know. I could never keep that up. I think dealing with patients on a regular basis, but they all seem to have this kind of a higher plane that they're on, and they're there to help you, and they just calming you down seems to be like 90% of their job.
Yeah, like doctors,
you're in good hands.
Doctor's bedside manner is just one of the most vital things as well.
It makes
right?
a huge difference, I think, to how people respond to you, and it's something that I've learned on the job over the years. I think, you know, I interact better with patients now than I did when I first qualified, for sure.
I don't know about you, Brian, but like for me, just, you know, I haven't had anything really serious happen to my body like during the course of my life. I've had 1 or 2 minor operations, but man, hospitals, you feel so vulnerable, right?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's
because it's completely not in your hands.
Do you think that this is going to be a strange question, but look, we're all going to die one day, right? It's pretty
We're
straight
probably
up.
all going to be seriously injured someday and
Yeah.
have some major surgery someday.
Yeah. So
We're all going to get prostate cancer too because we're dudes.
the question
Right?
I was going to ask him is, do you think that when that time comes, when you're an old man and you're going to hospital for the end, you know, like if that's the way you go, do you think it will be an easier process for you than the average person who's not used to that, or?
No. I'm well adapted to the idea that I'm mortal and I'm going to die. Do you know what I mean? I have a huge understanding of that. You know, a huge awareness of that. So I think perhaps it's not going to be a big surprise when that day comes. But no one wants to die, do they? You know, I've never seen anyone, who really desperately on their deathbed wants to be out of here, other than to alleviate suffering, or if they're suicidal perhaps or something like that. But
Do you think you want to go in a bang? I mean, I hear a lot of people that get diagnosed with cancer, and it's a horrible way to go. But I also think that it's not a good thing, but that you have 3 months or 6 months to kind of wrap things up, as opposed to I'm just crossing the street one day and I just get nailed by a bus, and that's it. I can't reflect. I can't talk to people. Do you ever think about that?
Sort of conversation you have in medical school. How do you want to go? And we have a top 10 list of things we don't want to go with.
Okay.
There's horrible diseases we don't want to get, and then there's a few things. I think for me, I want to be like,
Surrounded by
85,
your
90
family.
with all my faculties, and then just go quietly, massive heart attack in my sleep,
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think that's a good way to go.
I want to jump out of an
So-
airplane without a parachute.
Yeah.
That would be awesome.
Yeah.
Do you know
When you're 85 or?
Yeah, dude. If I start to feel myself becoming like decrepit and forgetting like my friends' names and
Then you're
stuff,
gonna go.
dude, I'm gonna go out with a bang.
Yeah, you know what I'm gonna do?
Tell me.
I'm gonna plan my funeral, and I'm gonna have video messages, and it's gonna be a big fucking party, and everyone's gonna show up, and we're gonna have ecstasy for Nick, and everyone's gonna party, and then every half hour I'm gonna come up on the screen and I'll be like, "Hey motherfuckers, rock on!" And I'll be like, "Here's the entree. It's gonna be steaks," and then I'll come off the screen, and then some people will be disturbed, but that could be really fun, right?
I still think that would bum people out.
But I had to plan it. I plan it in months in
Yeah.
advance,
Yeah.
but maybe it would bum some people out.
I think you just got to kind of live each day as it comes, haven't you? Really, and make sure that you're enjoying it at the moment, because I'm really, really aware that it's pretty fragile.
Yeah.
Was medical school very difficult? And like the first time you had to dissect a human cadaver, I mean, at any point did you want to say, I don't want to do this anymore? Because it's a lot of schooling, isn't it?
I mean, I loved medical school, and that was the best times. I mean,
That's just because you were hooking up with the nurses, you bastard.
No, I wasn't. In fact, I met my wife in the first year of medical school, so and we've been together pretty much the whole way since then. So, but we had a great time, and the exams were tough, and it's exam after exam, and you have to study hard, but you have a lot of fun. People kick back and they really enjoy it, and I played a lot of sports and met a lot of great people. Friends I've had, the friends that I've kept for all these years since, and I love medical school. It's
How
a great
long
time.
was medical school?
I was there for 6 years because I did an extra year to do a Bachelor of Science in physiology as well. So you can intercalate and do a degree in the middle.
Okay.
You know what's amazing is if I'm teaching a jiu-jitsu class, or if I'm teaching a private lesson or something, and I'll be like trying to describe a certain technique, and I'm saying, oh, you want to put this part of your body, and like Mark's like, yeah, that's the radial bone, or that's it's his knowledge of anatomy is just, it's incredible.
That's nice.
It's okay.
Yeah.
It's
it's okay.
don't test me on the internet now, So.
Yeah, that's pretty cool to know all that stuff from a physio standpoint. So this is your chosen track. Are you going to stay in A&E and intensive care for the rest of your career?
I mean, I think
'Cause that's young man's work, right?
it's tough work actually, but the night shifts and everything, they wear a bit thin sometimes, But
Is it all night?
Yeah, I work a shift pattern, so you tend to do day shifts, twilights or nights really. Like I'm doing weekend nights this weekend, sort of. There'll be like 12 hours overnight.
Wow,
so.
and that's where the action is.
Yeah, I mean it's pretty
Weekends.
busy. Yeah, weekends can be busy. Again, a lot of it's alcohol. It's just sort of sifting through that. And
I want to know something cool. Mark went and worked in Japan as when you were a med student,
medical
right?
student, we do what's called electives, where you get an opportunity to go to a different country for a few months, and I went over to Japan.
For how long were you there?
4 months.
What was what were some of the major differences in the way the medical community or the medical establishment is run in or operates in Japan compared to UK?
I mean, the underlying structure of the system is a bit different. I think it's like a sort of semi-private system over there, so that has a different feel to it. it was almost like being transported back in time to like the sort of 1950s, because all the nurses wore their little nurses' hats and the little old-fashioned skirts, and they were really deferential to the doctors. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, really?
Awesome.
Okay.
You know, if I was to speak to the nurses, you know, in the A&E department, like these dudes spoke to their nurses, I would get my ass kicked by them. You know, they wouldn't, and rightly so. Do you know what I mean? And they're very well respected. I think the respect of doctors in the culture over here is, people still respect doctors, but it's degraded, you know, I think over time, and you know, people understand that we're mortal, we make mistakes, we don't get everything right, and
that's in the States, you know, you always hear about like litigation and stuff. Like apparently doctors are, if someone falls down in the street and hurts themselves, doctors like don't want to get involved, because if you try to treat the guy and you do something wrong, then you get sued, right?
I think the malpractice insurance in the States, the premiums are very, very, very high because it's a very litigious country. But there still must be some litigation threats here.
There's a lot of litigation, yeah. And I think...
but not as much as the States.
Not as much as the States, no. But it's getting worse. I think the primary care sector, GPs, get a pretty tough time of it. I mean, you know, they're on the front line.
Are they insured?
They're insured, yeah.
Okay.
They pay a lot of money.
Are you insured?
I'm insured, but I'm also somewhat protected by the fact that I'm like not at consultant level, so I'm a registrar.
Okay.
So my consultant takes some responsibility for my actions, and also the trust that I work for, the hospital I work for, sort of indemnifies me to a certain degree as well. So my insurance is my monthly payment is like a sixth of my annual payment is like a sixth of what a GP would pay per month.
Wow.
So it's much less.
Wow.
Have you ever seen a doctor doing something wrong and you had to be like, what are you doing?
That's
and you had to stop him?
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, you know, part of my job is to supervise junior doctors, okay? And they're there to learn, you know, as well as to perform a service provision type role. And yeah, they do things wrong, and you have to educate them, you know.
You have to watch what they're doing, and
sometimes you have to literally watch what they're doing. You know,
if you see a doctor who's senior to you doing something that you know is wrong, and that could cost the patient their life, are you allowed to point that out? Are you allowed to like?
It's like an interview question, isn't it, for a job? But yeah, of course you have to. You know, the first priority is patient care and patient safety. Yeah. You know, if someone's doing something that's going to cost them their life, you stop them and you worry about the social interaction with your boss later. But I've never had to do that. I've never seen, the guys that I've worked for have all been pretty competent guys, and cool. I've learned a lot from them. So it happens, So
on a slightly, coming back to the Japan thing, I know. Did you were you telling me that you and Claire is Mark's beautiful wife, the mother of my beautiful goddaughter, by the way?
How's that feel being a godfather?
Man, that's powerful.
Yeah,
so I was over at Mark's house the other night for like the bath time, dinner time, bedtime kind of
you regretted
routine.
That, didn't you? So.
Man, I was there for 2 hours, right? Maybe 2 hours and a bit, and I like my goddaughter's older sister Emily. Like I had to read her a story, and then I had to hold Lucy and like rock her while Mark and Claire made dinner. And by the time I walked out, man, like I was shattered.
And 3 is, I've heard 3 is where it gets tough because you don't have that third pair of arms. I mean, right? I guess that's why you have Nick over.
Yeah. What are you doing on December the 16th? Claire's going out. I need someone else to come help.
Get bent,
bro. The thing is, my son's nearly 7 now, so he's pretty good help as well. He'll come and you don't need to get him dressed anymore. He'll dress himself. He's a little person now. He knows what's going on. He wants to help out. So it's not like having 3 babies who are newborns who are totally dependent on you. So, and it's not like you wake up one day with a 7-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 3-month-old. It sort of happens gradually, and you adapt to it over time. And it's pretty cool. Actually.
I tell you, bro, it was.
It's like running a business, isn't it?
Claire's the CEO.
Okay, that's good.
You know how you and I we enjoying the bachelor lifestyle.
Or are we?
I was sitting there with my little goddaughter, and man, it was flicking some weird switches in my brain, bro. Like on some deep
your testosterone dropped, by the way.
My testosterone dropped for sure.
It's been shown in studies now.
I can see it drop.
Yeah, it was like,
you didn't have to shave the next day.
Then he was like, "Come on, let's do some jiu-jitsu." Like when he got me down, right? But man, and that's not even, the kid's not even related to me by blood, and already I was feeling that kind of. It's powerful, man.
It was a nice thing actually watching you interact with it. Just to sit back and it's kind of special actually to see.
Like a monkey with a coconut, right?
Yeah, you kind of get used to having a baby in the house, and and all the different things they do. And I could just see Nick really soaking it in, and really enjoying it. It was nice. Nice to see.
It's very carnal, isn't it? you know,
Yeah,
just
it's
interacting with
Disney,
young humans.
So what I wanted to ask you is, I remember you telling me, I can't remember the exact story, but you and Claire went either to Hiroshima or Nagasaki.
We went to both, actually, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I went to...
It's quite a trip from Tokyo, isn't it? You have to really go out of your way.
Yeah, I mean, we basically spent like sort of, 2.5, 3 months in the hospital, and then we bought a Shinkansen pass, and then just did as much as we possibly could.
That's the bullet train.
Yeah.
Were you in Tokyo? I just was.
Yeah,
assuming.
the hospital I was in was Tokai Daigaku Byoin, which is about an hour outside of Tokyo. So I went into Tokyo a lot.
It's a huge city, isn't it? What's the population? 20 million or something? 25.
It felt like double that.
I couldn't get my head around that city because there's not like a downtown or a midtown. It's like there's all these like
it's so busy,
skyscraper.
I cannot wait to go to Japan. I cannot wait. I have to go. It's like number one.
You need some locals to show you around. I think is the most important thing.
You reckon?
You can feel otherwise really alienated when you're there. I find just because if you don't speak Japanese, which I think you don't, it's just and they're culturally they're quite. I mean, I was there when I was 12 years old, and I spent 6 weeks there, lived with a family, and I met some really nice people. And I went back for a pride fighting championship like 5-6 years ago, and I went to go hug this girl that I knew when I was 12, and like I hadn't seen her in ages. Yeah, she was just like, "What are you doing? We don't play that." And I was like, "Misako, I haven't seen you in ages," and she was just like, "We don't play that."
She's like, "Get off me, you dirty pervert."
There's definitely some differences in the culture. There's some huge differences. And
how did you find the people?
The people, they were extremely friendly
and polite,
with a sort of undertone of,
I could always tell Japanese tourists, like when I see Asian tourists in London, someone will be like, "Oh, look at those Chinese people," but they're not Chinese; they're Japanese.
How do you know the difference?
By the kindness and respect, the way they treat people,
Really?
And they're very. Very polite and very respectful. And funny enough, we went from Japan to Hong Kong after that. And I was in Hong Kong, and my brother and I were bargaining for electronics. We were like 13 years old. And this Hong Kong guy was tired of us because we were like, "No, give us 2 calculators and 1 video game." And he went off on us. And he was just like, "Get the fuck out of my store." And we were like, we'd never had an Asian person yell at us like that because in Japan, no one would ever do that. And we were like, "Where are we?" And we're in China, motherfucker.
I can give you a good example of how
Hit me up.
friendly and and welcoming they are, because when we went to Nagasaki, it was the Nagasaki Lantern Festival, and the whole place was just heaving. It was busting at the seams.
What is that about, Mark?
To be honest with you, I don't know, but there was a whole load of colourful lanterns everywhere.
A lantern festival, okay.
Yeah, and
it's not to commemorate the
no, it wasn't to do with that, and we'd booked this room, or my Japanese friend had booked this room for us in this kind of it was a ryokan. Like a traditional Japanese homestay type place.
Or like paper walls and stuff.
Yeah. And they double booked the room. So instead of just turfing us out, these guys, the guy that owned it, just like let us live in his house for our stay there. They just said, "Right, here's the spare room. You stay with us." That's pretty. You wouldn't happen over here, would it? And
no, they're so very just generous people. I stay with a family, and I stayed with a family the second time, and I made a mistake. They said, "What's your favorite food?" And I just, in passing, I was like, "I guess pizza." And then for 4 nights afterwards, they kept giving me pizza until I figured it out. I was like, "Wait a second, I just want some Japanese food," They were just out of their way to help. But it's a crazy place. I don't know if I could live there, but you should definitely go and check it out.
The
Samurai spirit is, you can feel it. They're just like when that tsunami happened, I saw some people, I think I was with you in Covent Garden, they were asking for money to help the Japanese. And the first thing I thought is, they don't need your help, A, and then they don't want your help. They're not a society that looks for charity. They've been through some crazy shit, as we know, from World War II and the bombings, and they have a pride and a spirit in them that's it's almost unparalleled in a culture.
Man, that the whole, the bombs, like Nagasaki and Hiroshima, just if you just think about what that event actually was,
what was it like being there? I mean, is the city all about where the former bombing site of the second atomic bomb, or is it?
Each place is a bit different.
Okay.
Hiroshima, there's a big monument, and there's a museum that you can go around. It takes you through it. Man, I wept the entire way around. I mean, it's just one of the most harrowing experiences of my life.
You probably saw pictures of the surviving victims.
Yeah, absolutely. And just there's like a sort of TV program playing for you there, and you just walk around, and it's just an awful feeling.
Okay. Man's in humanity to man, right?
That's
Nagasaki. There's an interesting book actually called The Bells of Nagasaki, and it's written by a doctor who what happened when the bomb dropped. So I think it was supposed to land on a munitions site, and the winds took it off course, and it landed on a hospital.
Really?
And this dude was a radiologist, so he was in this lead-lined box basically when the bomb hit, and he was protected from it. And he then set up a camp because it's in a basin, Nagasaki, so it's like surrounded by hills. And
that's why they chose it as a target, right?
Yeah, and he set up this camp on the hills on the side of Nagasaki, and then basically help people through the different phases of radiation poisoning and through their illnesses. And then he wrote this book, The Bells of Nagasaki, which it's a really difficult read. It's a short book, and it just in absolute sort of clinical detail describes each stage of radiation poisoning, what happened to all the patients that he was seeing, and from a medical perspective, it's fascinating. I mean, really, really interesting. But also, I don't think you'd get like an American or a British doctor writing it in this style. I think there was no emotion. It was just descriptive, and this guy then gave up all of his possessions and lived in a shack, and then just basically helped radiation survivors. He died of leukemia, I think, about 10, 15 years later.
Radiation related?
Yeah, of course,
okay.
yeah. And
I guess there was no medical experience with any kind of radiation before that, right?
I mean, a lot of what I think we do is based on experiences from Hiroshima and Nagasaki now.
Really?
Descriptive experiences of doctors that work there. So.
How close do you, I mean, Brian, this question is primarily aimed at you because you have, I like to think you have a pretty good knowledge of politics and global issues. So how close do you think we could, what's the likelihood of that kind of thing happening again in the world? Like one nation initiating like nuclear
I think it's high.
attack. Do you think so?
When we get a nation like Pakistan, there's the government there, and then there's the ISI, which is the intelligence agency there, which really runs the country. Kind of a good parallel would be like J. Edgar Hoover when Kennedy was elected. Mm-hmm. J. Edgar Hoover ran the FBI at the time, right? Mm. And he had more power than the president. He had files on the president. Yeah, and so he had been around for 15, 20 years, and JFK gets elected in a year, and he's like, "You think you run this country? I know what you've been doing with Marilyn Monroe, so I run the country." It's kind of a strange thing to understand that the ISI in Pakistan really runs the country. And okay, they've got the nuclear weapons locked down, but I just think it would be so easy for someone in a terrorism-related thing to just set one off in a major city that we couldn't go into again. Yeah, and I'd be surprised if it doesn't happen in the next 20 years. I just would be, but maybe I'm wrong. Now, Stratfor, which is the website I talk about a lot, they talk about actually having a nuclear weapon is one thing. Having one that can be shot in a missile is a completely different scenario.
Completely different.
So like Iran right now is probably 10 years away or maybe even 15 from being able to actually launch one. But as far as detonating one, that's a different story. Mm-hmm. So,
and that's my opinion. That comes into the likelihood of them, the way they'd initiate an attack like that is to get the bomb into the place they wanted to.
I mean, Iran's always talking about let's go to fire one into Israel or something. And maybe they're crazy enough to do it. I don't know, but I don't think they have the technology to launch them right now. But you look at states like Pakistan, and it just makes you wonder. And there's a lot of tension with India, who are also armed. It's.
I mean, that doesn't even need to be a nuclear thing. I mean, we do these CBRN training days, with chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear.
Okay. What do you guys do to prepare for that?
We sit around in a room and and hope and pray it doesn't happen. I think but no, we have there's certain things that you can do for each particular threat. So there's certain diseases that you want to watch out for, anthrax and that kind of thing that you get warned about. Chemical weapons that could affect. We're trying to recognize what's going to happen. I think I think when it happened in Tokyo with the sarin gas, was that about 15 years ago?
Yeah, it was in the subway, right?
There was so many healthcare workers, were hurt or died because they didn't recognize what was happening to start off with. Mm. So I think if you see something weird happening once, okay, something weird. If you see it happening, another patient comes in, it should really raise your awareness. And I think if you see 3 people coming in with the same weird symptoms, then you think this is kind of some sort of impending major incident.
Who do you call then at that point? Did you see the movie Contagion, by the way?
Yeah, I mean, we have the Health Protection Agency in the UK, so I think we activate those. I mean, I call my consultant and I activate the Health Protection Agency, and then we have a major incident alert, like for each hospital.
Okay.
And there's like a gold, silver, and bronze command, and we all have action cards. So, like, if something bad is to happen, there's some sort of major incident. basically we pull out the action card. We're all supposed to be aware of this, and we have training drills and everything, and then we all have our own set roles. So the likelihood is, if I'm the A&E registrar on that, I'll have a pretty key role at sort of entry point triage and that kind of thing for trying to designate tasks and trying to run the thing on a sort of frontline basis.
Okay. What did you think of Contagion? You haven't seen it yet, have you? I mean, it's pretty heavy.
Yeah.
I've seen Outbreak. Remember back in the day?
Yeah, that was good.
Similar?
Contagion just goes and there's like 20 million people dying, and it's going all around the world on planes, and I
think
it's pretty scary.
It's possible these things can happen.
It is, right?
Think of the Black Plague.
Yeah.
It has happened. It's
Yeah,
not
it has
possible
happened,
that it has happened.
That eliminated like a third of the European population.
Something like that.
I mean, the way that genetics work, there'll always be a tiny percentage of people that are, have some sort of innate immunity to something, so the human race will go on. But it'll have some pretty far-reaching effects on.
I was just watching that movie, and it's like it's not 2,000 people dead, and then it's 20,000, and it's 20 million, and
Jesus.
that people are fighting to get food, and then when the vaccine comes around, people are fighting to get vaccinated, and it's like the people in power are trying to get vaccinated first, and then I think they do the lottery system, and they choose 365 days of the year when you were born, when you get the vaccine. So some people are waiting like 6 months,
Wow.
and it's just the contagious behavior that's going on is scary.
I wanted to shift the conversation away from all this morbid stuff.
Yeah, please.
I love the morbid stuff.
Yeah, I know you do. You got that.
I knew this was going to happen.
Nihilist. Sure.
So, Mark, can you recall any really uplifting moments in your career working with the sick and the dying, and just anything like human beings banding together, or
so many.
really?
Yeah,
anything that
many.
comes to mind?
I mean, there's so many good things. People that have toughed out, survived illnesses. When you're a medical student, when I was in Japan, there was a kid I was on an pediatric oncology ward, and there was a kid that pulled through his chemo and all his radiotherapy for his leukemia and that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, simple things, make people happy. Just putting someone's shoulder back in, and they can go home that night in a sling. That's a job well done. That's something great. All the way to people. I had patients when I was in intensive care who were on death's door, were in the unit for 60 days, and then you decannulate their tracheostomy, and then you discharge them to the ward, and they get physio and they go home. I mean, what an amazing thing!
That is incredible.
To sort of come back from the brink. So all the way through the spectrum, from stitching up head wounds and and doing a good job with that, all the way to the other extreme. I mean, there's so many good things, and so many uplifting moments, and seeing relatives' faces when they're patient. Young guys, and I've had a young guy on ITU who had meningococcal sepsis, and we all thought this guy was going to die, and he lost fingers and toes, and his wife was coming in, and his he had his skin was sloughing off because of the way it was affecting him. And that guy, he went home and brought us in a box of chocolates a couple of weeks later. I mean, what an amazing thing, And
do you have to detach yourself personally from these patients? I mean, do they want to get in touch with you and thank
I've
you?
never had anyone, because they're normally asleep for the vast majority of their time that they're in with us. Yeah, you do. I mean, you have to detach yourself. I think it's more of a problem. My wife's a GP,
okay,
and I think it's more of a problem for in the primary care sector. I've done some general practice as well, and people just want to come in and talk to you. They just want to be part of your life and just have someone to talk to. They're lonely or
that's
depressed.
what one of my GPs said. He said, I get a lot of people that come in here, they're either hypochondriacs or something. They don't need any help. They just want to complain or to talk to someone. I don't know.
Yeah. And it's an important job as well. It's a pastoral role, I suppose, isn't it?
It is.
But it's not for me. But it's.
Did you make that choice not to go down that road?
I worked as a GP for a little while, and for a couple of years, and then I decided that I preferred the acute setting, and took that step back in. And
do you like the buzz of a busy A&E?
Yeah, definitely.
I believe that.
Yeah.
How close is it to like ER?
Like the movies.
Yeah,
not that close.
It's not,
No.
Yeah, I mean, you see the same stuff, but it's less. It seems less dramatic to me.
Yeah,
Maybe it
yeah.
would seem dramatic to the people in the department. I mean,
have you ever had to do the thing with clear.
No, it's really disappointing now, because about sort of...
We need a bouncer and get you out of here.
10 years ago, we created these gel pads. So you just have this sticky gel pad that conducts electricity, and you just put it to their chest, and you stand 10 feet away and press a button. And so it's no
more paddles.
None of this paddle
Have you ever had
stuff.
to like hammer fist a dude in the chest to get his heart started again?
What I've had to percussion pace somebody, actually.
What is that?
So basically, when someone, their heart rate drops below a certain level, they can't, their circulation can't be sustained by it, and you can externally pace people, and you can actually pace someone by just delivering electricity to their chest wall by just giving them 10 joules over and over again, and dropping your hand on their chest.
Okay,
while you get
just by physical.
Yeah, just literally do that, and you can do that for a little while until you can get an external pacing system set up.
Really?
Last question on this theme. Have you ever had to give a really hot chick mouth-to-mouth resuscitation?
No.
You had to give a really ugly chick mouth-to-mouth resuscitation.
I've had to give mouth-to-mouth resuscitation to a horrible junkie in the street that took an overdose.
Really?
Never to a hot chick, yeah.
You did?
Yeah.
Did you even have a split second of, oh, this is going to be gross? Or does the doctor take over?
Gross.
It was?
It was gross.
Was he?
I went home and
he was out, I guess. He was just...
It was a she, but yeah, she was just unconscious. Just having, I think it'd taken opiates, heroin or something, and, I just had to... she was apneic, and I just gave her rescue breaths intermittently until the ambulance arrived, but it was pretty grim.
Wow.
So
that's
I went home, got the vodka out, and had a swill round.
You said no drinking.
No drinking. I spat it out.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I mean, what is some of the crazier things that you've seen? Besides the usual drunken things. In
what sort of way?
In an A&E perspective, where you're like, wow, I can't believe that just happened, or I can't believe.
Like, have you ever had to take an axe out of a dude's head or something like that?
Yeah. There was, it's all sorts of crazy stuff, that happens. Everyone loves a good foreign body story, removing
foreign body,
like something that's been inserted into an orifice or something.
Okay, you got to tell us. Have you ever heard a ridiculous story that's been made up to cover up the fact that some guy was getting a thrill over putting something up his orifice?
Everyone seems to slip and fall. So.
Slip and fall.
Yeah. I slipped and fell on the pool cue, doctor. I don't know if this is an urban legend, but when I was at Charing Cross in medical school, there apparently was a guy that inserted an unexploded World War II shell up his backside, and then they had to take him to theatre and get the bomb squad in, and everyone had to gear up with with bomb gear and protection gear. I don't know if that's true.
But at what point do you think that that's a good idea? Like,
also you got to wonder what they tried before they went to A&E. They're like, fuck, for the hours they spend at home trying to undo it.
That's
so
crazy.
Do you see a lot of sexual related emergency stuff?
No,
okay.
Not a lot of sexual related. You do see some, but not a huge amount. But you see some arguing couples, and it was his idea and that kind of thing. But
it's his idea.
Wow.
So
okay.
It's human life, isn't it? People try different things and do different
crazy
things.
game we're playing, right?
Yeah, especially when the country gets too wealthy, they get too bored, and they start doing crazy stuff. Yeah. We only got a few minutes left. I was wondering if there's anything you want to wrap up with.
That was fascinating.
I know, we could go hours. We're going to turn this off, and then we're going to ask you some more questions for another hour.
I had to go into my kids' school a couple of years ago, and I got asked more sensible questions about the 6-year-old kids than
you did, as opposed to the Nick questions. Have you ever had?
They were similar, So.
What did the kids ask?
Most of them wanted to know, can I fix bones? They all seem to be obsessed with, can I fix bones?
Really?
And they all seem to be really, really interested in that. And I actually took some. It was a fun afternoon actually. My kid was like 4 at the time or something actually, and I took some plaster in and plastered the teacher's arm, and then got them put in slings on that kind of stuff, and it was quite fun. They all seem to. Can you fix bone? Can you fix this bone? Can you fix that bone? So,
that's crazy.
Maybe that was just the stage of development they were at. They understood. I think maybe a couple of the kids had fractured some bones around that time and they're coming in plastic casts and stuff. I get it. Maybe what had stimulated that.
That's cool.
I keep thinking of that Alec Baldwin movie where he's the doctor and he has this God complex.
Which one was that?
I forgot the name of it, but there's a scene where they're like, when they're in the hospital and they go to the church in the hospital and they're praying. He's like, who do you think they're praying to? They're praying to me. He's like, you think I have a God complex? I am God. He's like, I'm the one that saved your kids. I'm the one that saved your wife. So I was just wondering if you're God.
No, man, no.
But do you meet doctors with God complexes, or is that just?
I mean, you used to meet the old sort of old school surgeon. You know, those guys have got to be pretty confident. If you're going to stick a knife in someone's belly and open them up, and you know, you've got to have pretty powerful belief in what you're doing. You know,
okay. So, is that the highest level of that game?
I mean, you know, it's an aspect of the game. You know,
okay.
I mean, you know, when there's different things that I do that if you do what's called a rapid sequence induction, where you have to intubate somebody, you know, you give them a paralytic agent. You know, they can't breathe themselves. If I don't get that tube in, they will die. You know, if you can't ventilate them. So, you know, but you're not playing God because you're dealing with sick people. You know, and you have to remember that these guys they need your help. They're going to die if you don't do something. So you're not playing God. You're just trying to help. And you know, a lot of the junior doctors get worried about running cardiac arrests and that kind of thing. And you know, I think I always say to them, you know, you can't make it any worse. This patient's dead.
So they panic on cardiac arrest.
Yeah,
and you said
I think there's something that's fearful about, you know, trying to resuscitate, you know, someone who's just recently died or, you know, has had an arrest. And I think you have to have faith in the system. You have to have faith in the training that you've had. And, you know, you have to understand that, you know, you can try things because you can't make it any worse under those circumstances, you know, and you have to be bold and you have to believe in what you're doing, you know. I don't know if that answers your question.
No, it does. I'm thinking about how, you know, like trading on a city trading floor, on being a doctor at A&E, and just like, I don't know, like how it just must,
high stress environment.
It just pushes your mind to just like do these things and make these hugely critical choices.
Yeah, I've asked him like a similar question before, but the thing is, I think your response was that your threshold will just raise, you know, according to the stimulus that the stimuli that you're exposed to. So, I mean, for you now, going on and doing a 12-hour shift and seeing people die and doing a tracheotomy, how do you say it?
Or an intubation or I mean, I've only done one trachea, and you know, put one trachea, and that was in intensive care, and it was an elective procedure, you know. So it's not like we're doing this all the time, you know, needle crikes and like cricothyroidotomies and that kind of stuff. These happen very rarely. Okay. But you know, intubating someone and actually sort of visualizing a cord a tube going through the vocal cords is something that, you know, I do occasionally. And
that's heavy. Dude, that pretty much wraps us up. Dr. Marc, that was awesome.
Yeah, that was wow.
I think our viewers are gonna love that. You know, it's just a nice little snitch. I've never even had this kind of conversation with a doc. So thanks for coming in.
Glad you enjoyed it.
Man, that was proper London real, right?
Yeah, that was super real. So yeah, we should get you back sometime next year.
Guys, anytime. Yeah,
and we'll get you more questions, more Nick questions.
Nick's going to be on Wikipedia the night before next time.
Have you ever?
What do you do in case of a zombie invasion?
That's all good. All right, guys, thanks so much for coming on.
It's about the journey.
It is. All right, guys, take care.